Two people, same neighborhood, same starting point. No family money, no connections, no head start. One of them is still there 10 years later, the other one isn't. Most people call that luck. Psychology calls it something more specific. Because the people who build from nothing don't just work harder, they process failure differently. They relate to uncertainty differently. They even see themselves differently, before any evidence says they should. That's not motivation, that's a pattern, and it shows up in specific, recognizable ways. There are 8 of them, and if you've ever wondered why some people escape difficult starting points while others with the same circumstances don't, the answer isn't outside them. It never was. Psychology has studied this question carefully, and what it keeps finding isn't a set of strategies. It's a set of internal shifts, small, quiet, and mostly invisible from the outside. Here are the 8 that show up most consistently. Point 1. They change their identity before their circumstances changed. Most people wait for success before they allow themselves to feel like a successful person. These people did it in reverse. At some point, quietly, without announcement, they stopped identifying with where they were and started identifying with where they were going. The environment hadn't changed, the bank account hadn't changed, but the internal story had. You've probably heard mindset shift so many times it stopped meaning anything. This is more specific than that. It's a person who stops saying people like me don't make it and starts behaving, almost imperceptibly, like someone who will. Psychology shows behavior follows identity, not the other way around. Which means the shift in self-concept isn't the result of success, it's the beginning of it. Point 2. They became comfortable sitting with uncertainty. Building from nothing almost always means acting before guarantees exist. No confirmed results, no clear path, no certainty it will work. Most people's brains treat uncertainty as a threat. The discomfort of not knowing becomes a reason to wait, and waiting becomes a habit, and the habit becomes years. People who rise from zero don't eliminate that discomfort, they just stop letting it be the deciding vote. From the outside, that looks like recklessness. From the inside, it feels more like a trained tolerance. The uncertainty is still present. They just stopped needing it to disappear before moving. Point 3. They stopped letting emotions make financial decisions. Fear of judgment made them spend money they didn't have. Embarrassment made them avoid the opportunity that required asking for help. Excitement made them move too fast on something that needed patience. You felt at least one of those. Most people have. The difference isn't that successful people don't feel these things. They do. What changes is the gap between feeling and deciding. The emotion arrives, and the decision waits. From the outside, that looks like coldness. It's actually emotional awareness at a higher level. The feeling is noticed. It just doesn't automatically get obeyed. Point 4. They delayed reward without resenting the wait. This goes deeper than the standard advice about patience. Most people can white-knuckle through sacrifice for a while, but what's rarely talked about is what builds up psychologically during the wait. Resentment, a quiet, growing bitterness toward the discipline itself, and eventually a collapse back into the immediate reward. Not because the goal stopped mattering, because the waiting had become painful enough to escape. People who successfully delay reward find a way to make meaning from the sacrifice itself. The discipline becomes evidence. I am someone who does this. The waiting stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like proof. That's a small internal difference. Over 10 years, it's the whole game. Point 5. They treated failure as data, not verdict. A failed attempt tells two kinds of people two completely different things. One person hears, "This confirms what I already suspected about myself." The feedback loop closes. The next attempt gets smaller or never happens. The other person hears, "That specific approach didn't work." The loop stays open. The next attempt uses new information. Same failure, completely different internal processing. This isn't toxic positivity. The failure still stings. The difference is whether the sting becomes a conclusion or a data point. Most people who stay stuck aren't lacking in effort. They're trapped in a loop where every setback quietly confirms the original doubt. Point 6. They built skills when others were building images. From the outside, this person can look like they're behind. No flashy moves, no visible wins for a long time. While others were optimizing how success looked, these people were quietly becoming more capable. The psychology behind this is simple but easy to miss. Skills create options. Options create opportunities. Opportunities, over time, create money. Image creates the appearance of that sequence, but in reverse order, and usually at a cost that outpaces what's coming in. Here's what makes this pattern stick. Capability compounds. Every skill built makes the next skill easier to acquire. Every opportunity taken creates access to the next one. It's slow and invisible at first, then suddenly it isn't. The returns show up late, but they show up, and they don't disappear when circumstances change. Point 7. They learn to tolerate being misunderstood. This is the point most lists skip entirely. When you make unconventional decisions, turning down stable income for an uncertain bet, living below your means when everyone around you isn't, investing time in something nobody around you understands, people notice, and most of them say something. That's risky. That doesn't make sense. Why would you do that right now? The people around you can only judge what they can see. They can't see the internal calculation. And if every decision requires their understanding first, you can only ever make decisions they already understand. For people who need social approval before moving, this is a wall that never moves. The people who build from zero develop a specific tolerance for being seen wrong in the short term. That's not arrogance. It's a necessary psychological cost of doing something that hasn't been done yet, at least not by anyone in the room. Point 8. They had one person who treated their potential as real. Research on resilience, across backgrounds, across cultures, keeps finding the same thing. People who escape genuinely difficult circumstances almost always name someone. A teacher, an older relative, a mentor who saw something before it existed. Not someone who gave them money or opened doors, someone who reflected their potential back at them as though it was already real. Who spoke to the version of them that didn't exist yet, as if it did. That might look like luck. Psychologically, what it does is foundational. It gives the brain its first external evidence that a different version of this person is actually possible. Self-belief built entirely in isolation is fragile. Self-belief built through even one relationship that treats you as capable, that holds. If you had that person, you know exactly who just came to mind. These 8 patterns don't look like a wealth strategy. They look like a different way of being a person, a different relationship with uncertainty, with failure, with how long things are supposed to take, with what other people think along the way, with who you are right now versus who you're in the process of becoming. That's what psychology actually finds when it studies people who build from nothing. Not superior intelligence, not unusual luck, a different internal architecture, built slowly, often without anyone noticing, sometimes without the person themselves fully understanding what they were constructing. Getting rich from zero is an identity story first. The money is just what happens when that story changes.